Okay, we're live.
We're
Hey,
live.
everybody. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 2 of Nick and Doug's America. We have a very special guest today. We have the one and only Dr. Bob Leonard, anthropologist, journalist, movie star extraordinaire. He's joining us today. Dr. Bob, thank you. And for people that don't subscribe to deep Midwest politics and culture, and who might not have met you or haven't read your work yet, just introduce yourself, the type of stuff you write about and what you like to do in your free time.
Well, I'm an anthropologist. I see the world through the lens of an anthropologist. I try to learn from everybody around me. I'm pretty curious about everything. I think that it's our job as human beings to try to understand and appreciate other people in the world around us, and I just try to do that. I write about whatever I think is interesting. There's all kinds of things that happen in the world around us. I mean, really, it's just matter and energy that's flowing everywhere, and we just grab pieces of it. And I try to tell stories just like you two do. And I grew up sort of in an oral tradition back in the time when there was, only 3 television stations and everybody told stories. And so telling stories has been part of, my entire existence. And telling a good story there's just a really good feeling that comes with it of when people, that take the time to watch or listen to what you're doing, get some enjoyment out of it, or something educational, or some kind of appreciation of, ideally, of a part of the world we don't understand. So I'll just dig into anything, and especially I try to probe my ignorance deeply.
And Doug, how are you doing this morning? I didn't even acknowledge my co-host. What's going on? I got too excited because Dr. Bob is on.
You and I are both thrilled to have our friend and really he's a mentor to both of us too. And of course, Nick's the director and the visionary behind the film The Negro Artist, on our mutual friend, a friend of all three of ours, Caleb Rainey, and Bob, of course, has a defining role in that film. So we've known Bob for a long time. So I'm in Carroll, over in Western Iowa, the city you're really familiar with, Nick. You've been here with me a lot, and you are coming from the Bay Area, correct? In California.
Bay Area. Yes, sir.
And Bob, are you in Knoxville right now, or are you somewhere else?
Well, we're in the process of moving today. We've decided to leave our home in the countryside down near Bussey, and we're moving to a place in Knoxville. I've been remodeling it for a couple of months now, and it was a place that needed a lot of work, let me put it that way. And so I'm in my basement. A couple of friends are helping move upstairs, and I wouldn't miss this with you two, so I'm taking a break. And
thank you. That means a lot. Bob, the reason that we'd like to chat with you about like a variety of topics. As Nick mentioned, you're an anthropologist, a journalist. You have an abiding curiosity and a deep empathy that's just really rare in human beings, much less people in our profession. But Nick and I are both really intrigued, really impressed with the series that you did on homelessness and hunger, a series you developed with Jason Walsmith, who's also a member of the Iowa Writers Collaborative, a songwriter, and a fantastic photographer. Backstory: Jason Walsmith and I in the 90s worked together at the Ames Tribune. So I had the experience that you had, Bob, of being able to go out and have my writing, my reporting accessorized and elevated by Jason's brilliant photography, which in this case, in your series, was featured in black and white. Could you tell us why you and Jason decided to go to the Des Moines Area Religious Council, the DMARC Food Pantry on Army Post Road? How did this idea develop it, and why did you go there? And then Nick and I have read all the stories, so I know Nick has some questions, very specific ones, on some of the people facing hunger and unhoused arrangements.
Well, Jason reached out to me and said, "Hey, let's do something together. Let me know when you're working on a story, and I'll come, and take some photographs for you." And I know he's a great photographer, and a lot of the stories that I do, they just pop up. They just don't plan. I'm at I like to be in a place and be in a space and listen and learn and watch and then construct a story around that. And so a lot of it's just really impromptu. I never know when a story is going to materialize in front of me. But then when the news hit that the SNAP benefits were going to end, I've talked to a lot of homeless people and a lot of people without any that are on SNAP benefits over the years, and I thought this is a historic moment. It was October 31st. So I reached out to Luke Elzinga at DMARC, and I've known Luke for many years. And I said, "Hey, what do you think of Jason Walsmith and I coming down on Friday, the day before SNAP benefits were to end, and interview people?" He set it up, he met us, and then he just let us go. And I wanted it to be something meaningful. I wasn't going to, and I wanted to document a historical event and let the people's voices be heard. I'm sure you noticed that we didn't write a lot. I mean, I wrote one paragraph that I think was particularly valuable, but the rest of it was just setting the stage and letting the people speak. And it was interesting. Some people didn't want their names used. Some people didn't want to have their faces photographed, but they were fine with their hands being photographed or their cart. Some people were all for faces, but no one turned us down. The only thing that really didn't work out was a woman with young children that I struck up a conversation with, but my Spanish wasn't good enough to pull it off. So that's the only. Everybody else was, it was, if not eager to tell their story, they wanted to tell it. And so it's the people's voices. It's not really our interpretation. And the power of the human voice, there's just nothing like it. I'm not a good enough writer to capture the power in the human voice. And you guys know about this too, with respect to movie making and images and the power of voice and the emotions that you can get from the people that you're talking to that you can't capture with the written word.
Yeah, it is really unique. And for people who haven't checked out the series yet, it's presented with Dr. Bob giving an intro basically to where they're at and who they're speaking with. And then you get an audio file of the interview where you do hear a lot of emotion. It really does help to set the scene. And then you have a transcript that you can also read along with. So I really appreciated that aspect of it. But the photos were really unique, and I'm familiar with Jason's photography style. He's taken photos for me for one of my events, and he's spectacularly skilled. And I guess what I want to ask is, why did you guys decide to make the photos black and white?
Well, I didn't really have anything to say with that. I'm not going to. It was his creative decision. I'm not going to help people make creative decisions like that. He didn't ask me. I would have said whatever you want, and that's what he chose. And I think that there's something that transcends time with black and white. We can go back to the Walker Evans photos of the Depression and the haunting, richness that comes out of black and white. And I just think that, that's a tie to the Great Depression, probably the last time Americans were this hungry.
Right. And, are you guys going to continue this series, or, how are you guys spacing out the stories? Are you trying to release them weekly, or how is that working out?
Well, we were just going to do one story. Mm-hmm. And then when we got so much rich information from all the people, we decided to give everybody their own story. Scott got two because he had a lot of bags to carry. He said it was going to take all afternoon for him to get there on his bike because he'd have to push his bike holding all the bags. And so I just said, "Do you want to ride?" And Jason followed us, and so we went to his camp. And I said, "Do you think we could come in and talk to people at your camp?" And he said, "Well, let me go ask." And he went and asked and then brought us in. And that was pretty interesting. So Scott sort of had two stories. But when somebody says something profound, and especially today, it's just like, you want to savor it. You have to let it linger. And I wanted people to really linger on the voices in the one person. And we could have stuffed them all in, but then it mutes everybody's voice, I think. And so we trickled them out. I think that we'll probably go back, but we'll probably tie it to a historical event where something happens to impact people, so that you're just not seeing the people on the news. You're not, let's say the legislature does something that, puts people in harm's way, as they've done for the past, several years. I think we'll like to be there and document it and let the people speak. People don't need to hear from us about it. They need to hear the voices of the people that are directly impacted. And so we'll probably come back to that. But Luke knows that we're ready to go. And if he sees something that we can help people tell their story in that community, we will jump at it. There's other kinds of things that I want to do too. And Jason and I talked about them. If the baristas at Starbucks go on strike, I want to be there. I mean, I was at Starbucks in Des Moines, and there was like a dozen women, all young women, working like crazy, getting coffees together. It was just amazing. And if those, powerful young women are out on strike, I'm going to help give them voice. And I bet Jason wants to too. We're setting up something else that we'll see if it comes through or not. I'll just give you a hint. Not give you too much in case it doesn't go through, but it deals with people who have been incarcerated or are incarcerated. How often do we hear their voices?
No, I've thought about trying to incorporate. First of all, we're all three of us are members of the Iowa Writers Collective. So a big thank you to our visionary leader there, Julie Gamick. That's one of the reasons that the three of us are together on this call. Quite candidly, she's the foundation for so much good in this state, and so many, just being able to lift and boost so many writers. I don't tend to go to Starbucks, Bob. I'm not one of these guys that boycotts businesses. So if somebody I'm here in my office in Carroll. If somebody came in with a caramel latte right now, I'm not going to lie, I drink it. But in Des Moines, and Nik and I have spent a lot of time working together on different writing projects. And one of the places we like going is Mars, the Mars Cafe, on University, right across from Drake. So when we can, we like to support the small independent coffee shops. Mars happens to be Black owned, and Nik has a series on small Black owned businesses that he publishes on his platform, the 7 times. Let's get to some of the people. Let's get to some of the people, Bob, that are in your. If you wanted to make a point there, please, before I ask my question.
Oh, sure. The only reason I was at Starbucks is that I was there early, an hour early for I'm always afraid my old truck's going to break down. So I was an hour early for the interview with Charity Nebbe, and I wanted to walk somewhere. I didn't want to drive anywhere. So I looked on my phone, where's a coffee shop? And it led me to the closest coffee shop, which was Starbucks. I'm not a Starbucks guy either. I drink black coffee.
Okay. We're not. Yeah. So
you have to defend. You got to defend while you're in Starbucks. Yeah, definitely. People would have had questions.
So, getting to some of the people in this remarkable series, and again, this series can be found, Bob. It can be found on your Substack, Deep Midwest. It can be found on the Jason Walsmith. Does he have it on the Racontourist, or what is the?
Yeah.
So Jason Walsmith, Substack, Bob Leonard, Substack, both part of the Iowa Writers Collaborative, can be accessed through that as well. One of the women you write about, a woman named Kathy, seemed to be in her 70s on Social Security, and it was remarkable. This is somebody who'd worked until she was 70. She's living on Social Security, struggling to get by. And not just it almost seemed to me like if she were really just selfish and just took care of herself, that she'd probably be able to get by. I mean, that's what she alluded to in your reporting, in your exchange. but she's taking care of a couple members of her family, and even on limited income, sees herself first as a provider. You encountered her at the food pantry. Tell us about Kathy, one of the people that you spotlighted in this series.
Well, you're right. She was in her 70s, I would guess, and she had a medical device that she was getting oxygen from, and so she's pushing her cart. She's clearly disabled. She told us the story that she didn't understand why um, her husband had put into Social Security for his entire life, and then when he died, she took his Social Security as normal, but it only lasted for 4 years, and she wanted to know why, if he invested in Social Security for, let's just say, 50 years, where did that money go to? And I presume it goes to support the Social Security system, but that isn't the bargain that we make. I think that most of us think that, those people who are married, they think that their spouse will get their benefits, until they die too. But that's not how it happens. That was interesting. I didn't know that. I did some research and figured out, yes, indeed, that is the case, which is disturbing. But one of the things that she said was really interesting, just the way that she said it, and I'll just paraphrase it. And she said, people are being hungry. We're at the food bank. And she said, and we're building a $300 million whatever ballroom. She said, will you get to dance in that ballroom?
I thought Walsmith's reaction to that, he said if he got invited that he would invite her to the dance. Yeah. But she, of all the people that you interviewed or interacted with, she really asked some deep and profound policy questions.
Yes.
She asked, wait, I've paid taxes. I've worked. Like,
yes.
where is this money going? And then she mentioned, she had serious questions about the remodel of the White House, the addition of Trump's ballroom, and was very angry about that, Bob.
Yes, she was. And one of the things that we do is we don't ask a lot of I've learned over the years in radio that if you just let people talk and not interrupt them, they're just going to keep telling you stuff. And so I just let her go until she was done. And that's what I did with everybody. But, occasionally a follow-up. But she was too good by herself. It's just like, I didn't need to add anything, or direct her. She was just everybody was really, really good. And the thing is that these are what people don't understand unless you're around people in poverty or, that are hungry or homeless. They're just like us. Most of the ones that I know, there's some with some serious mental issues that I've ran into over the years. I'm sort of strange because, or odd, I guess, is the thing, because if I see somebody, let's say at the Walmart parking lot in Knoxville, asking for money, I get out and I go talk with them. I want to know their story. And so, I've done this a lot over the years. I did it in Albuquerque and Seattle too, because I'm just curious about what situations bring you there. But yeah, they've got a lot to say, and they're pretty much just like us, except life threw them a curveball. And, and sometimes, and Jason said it very well, people are always talking about, well, what circumstances brought them there? What bad decisions did they make? What did they do wrong? And so it's almost like, okay, Jason said, I don't care what circumstances brought people into this situation. We still need to feed them. As if a mistake that they made means that we get to starve them to death. I don't care. I knew I didn't care. But the way Jason said it, it's just like we sit in judgments and we say, was that a drug problem? Did they just make bad financial decisions? Oh, those poor people. Too bad. They're on their own because they made bad decisions. We all make bad decisions. Sometimes the consequences are worse for some of us than for others. And so because they made a bad decision, and a lot of them didn't make bad decisions, just lie, they're injured. They've had their home stripped away, their trailer. One of the guys, Scott, had his trailer stripped away from him when a hedge fund manager bought the trailer park. He had his trailer paid for, but then his lot rent doubled. Okay? So sometimes circumstances bring us into these positions, but the bottom line is we need to reframe this and not look at the our judgments of their actions. Means that if we don't approve of the circumstances that brought them there, we don't understand it, they get to starve to death. That's how our society is set up. And people, I know, I'm going to say that I was, one time I was helping out at a food bank at the school in Knoxville, and I was carrying out stuff to a guy's trunk to put in his trunk, and I'm walking up to him. See, I'm guilty of this too, and I'm walking up to him, and I'm saying, "Well, that's a big, strong guy. Why doesn't he go get a job?" And I got up to him to help him put the food in the trunk, and he was almost nonverbal. He could hardly speak. I could see in his eyes he was grateful for me helping him with the food, but I thought, Bob, what a dumbass. You were judging this guy before you even talked to him. And so we all sort of do that, and we all have to stop. Whatever mistakes that we have made that put us in a difficult situation. And Scott said this. He said, people want him to die, and people like him to die. No, we don't get to starve people to death because of decisions that they've made in their past.
And one thing, going back to Kathy, one thing that really stood out to me was one of her last quotes when she said, charity begins at home and it spreads. That was very powerful to me. And when we talk, we talk about none of these people were selfish. They were all at the food bank. You ask them what they're doing. The first thing they said is, I'm trying to take care of someone else. Like you had Scott, Scott was trying to take care of his son who was dealing with some difficulties. And he's like, I'm just trying to keep him alive. You had, Chris at the camp, and an encampment where homeless people were staying or other unhoused people were staying. And, he's like, I'm going to make sure these people are good. I'm trying to take care of my dog. I'm trying to stay with my girlfriend, make sure she's good. So the first thing that came out of everybody's mouth was, man, I'm starving. It was like, man, I'm trying to keep my son alive. I'm trying to take care of my 2 kids who've fallen on hard times. And, none of the, people have this misconception about selfishness and laziness, kind of some of the points that you've said, but a lot of these people are trying to take care of others. Was there anything that surprised you from talking to some of the subjects in your stories?
Well, yeah, it was just like, it's sort of, Scott talked about all the barriers that get in the way of success of people of trying to pull themselves out of poverty. It's everything from low credit scores, or if you can get there's one thing that was interesting. There's one place where they can shower, and he has to go, take 2 or 3 bus transfers. And he said, you're timed. And it takes you so long to get out of your clothes. It takes you so long to shower. It takes you so long to get into your get back into your clothes. And he says the water is lukewarm. He said they can't give us hot water. They have to time us. We're all under all this extra scrutiny. He said, if you somehow relapse, if you have a drug problem, then you're out. They split up families. They say, okay, we'll help you, but you have to split up. And that's much broader than that. There's a lot of people I know several people, on disability that would like to work, but they can only work so much. And so they have to divorce their spouse. And the system makes them do that. The system says it. And it's like Luke Elzinga has a shirt, and I'm sure a lot of other people do too, is that hunger is a policy decision. But yeah, I learned something from everybody. It's just like, and can you imagine you heard Scott cry when he said, I'm just trying to keep my son alive. Can you imagine the mental anguish of trying to keep your son alive? Or Kathy and her son, or, one of the other women that uh, was,
One of the what
pregnant.
is her name Natasia? Am I pronouncing that
Yeah,
accurate?
Natasha.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Natasia has five kids.
Yes, and she was pregnant at, 14, and she's 33, and she came home one day, one night, whatever, and found her husband dead. She's a 33-year-old widow with on disability, with 5 children, and she was trying to feed her children, and she couldn't work, and so but can you imagine? And my heart went out to her, and there she was, just, you know she was, very dignified,
Well, Bob,
and
she was making some points that Republicans would agree with. One of her arguments was that she makes the case that during COVID that she thought that created a reluctance or even a laziness within the workforce, that people got accustomed to not having to work, and that people had expectations for higher pay. So I thought she made points that were really across the political spectrum, and that part of your interview with her really jumped out at me. Am I interpreting that wrong, or what are your
no,
thoughts on what she said there?
that surprised me. You asked me if you or Nick asked me if something surprised me, but that did, and I guess I didn't see that. I saw people wanting to get back to work mostly, but, I don't live in her world, but I guess one of the things I wanted to say was, imagine if most of us have had trouble once, you know, at one time in our life financially, most of us. And if people listening, if you're like me and buy 2 tires at a time rather than 4, you know what I'm talking about. And it's just like and so you have this general, with respect to, if you don't have a lot of money, you're always worried about money. And if you have 5 kids, can you imagine the extra mental stress that's there? And yeah, so anyway, she was remarkable. Everybody was remarkable. And Deb, I mean, and that's one of the reasons. Deb is one of the reasons you have to listen to the audio, because words don't do it. At the end of the interview, she said, "Why did you have to make me cry?" And and just reading it is one thing, but hearing her voice, is something completely different. And she was just remarkable too. It's there's just so many people just like us that are there. And society treats them like they are disposable.
Well, then, and when we talk about Natasia, right? I know you guys already
Yeah,
Natasia. She was like, "Man, can we at least lower the price of produce? Like so I can get
Yeah.
some healthier food for my family."
yeah,
And you know, and then to kind of counter what she said, she said people, after COVID were asking for higher pay, but Deb kind of makes the point that sure, yeah, people want higher pay because the cost of living has skyrocketed since COVID,
mhm,
and wages have stayed the same. It doesn't make sense. You can't make that make sense. And I want to go back to something you mentioned, falling on hard times. I mean, when I listened to Scott's story, I couldn't help but think about situations I've been in as well, where I mean, my life isn't perfect. I've dealt with some difficult times, but I've always been grateful to have friends, like you guys, or family members that I know I can call when I'm having an issue, or when I need to talk through something, or if I need a fallback, I have that. And in the case of Scott, he didn't have that. And a lot of people don't have that. Scott was talking about how his son, he had another son that passed away 3 years ago, and he's still dealing with you could hear it, as he's telling his story, he's still dealing with that trauma, but he's never been able to recover from it because he's been in survival mode. And you can see, and then he's talking about the issues that he was dealing with his previous, with his son who had passed away. And he reached out to family, he had reached out to people for help, and no one was around to help him. And I just couldn't imagine what that would be like for me. And while he's dealing with that issue, then his trailer, where he's living gets sold to the hedge fund, and then his rent goes up. But he couldn't even focus on that because he was taking care of his son who was
Yeah.
sick. And he had no support. And for me in my hard times, I've always, I've been very grateful and fortunate to have support. But I feel for people like for Scott and for many other people who are kind of just on their own in tough situations.
Yeah. And yeah, his family, he did go to his family, and he said I think he said something like they just didn't want to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, it's sad. And it's very sad that, and a strange thing has happened that I think is important, is that I don't know, but most people don't know people that we know people in poverty, but a lot of us don't know people that, are houseless, or I say homeless still because everybody that I talked to said homeless there. Scott said homeless. And so I'm using their terminology.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, Bob. I still use that term because that's what I hear. There's some people that say that the proper term now is unhoused. But on this call, we're using homeless. Is that the right approach, or is there an argument that we should be using unhoused?
I think that if we get it, I think that this is part of the problem, is that if we turn this into an academic exercise about the right word to use, we're not solving the problem being hunger. So let's debate the terminology. Let's debate the appropriate linguistics term. And I mean, we've been doing that for, the last 20 years on a lot of issues. And so it's not, I don't care if, I'm just using the term that was used in this situation. And somebody convinced me to use something else, but let's not argue about, I know language matters and how we refer to things matters, but us debating the term doesn't fill bellies.
So Bob, when I was younger, in my I lived in Washington D.C. for 5 years, and I grew up here in rural Iowa, went to college in Chicago, so I'd encountered homelessness, but not at the scale I was seeing it during the first Bush recession. And I remember walking with my boss, Charlie Mitchell. I worked for Inside Washington Publishers and covered energy issues, so I wasn't covering homelessness. I wasn't covering those type of issues. I was covering national and state energy policy all over the country. And my boss, Charlie Mitchell, shout out to Charlie, he went on to become the editor of Roll Call. But as we were walking through downtown DC, I saw a homeless person who made a comment to us, and I just made I didn't say anything to the homeless person, but I made an unkind observation, the kind of thing that at the time I was 22, didn't have a lot of life behind me, and didn't really, maybe understand the dynamics, or hadn't developed the level of empathy that I hope I have. And I said to Charlie, there's something pretty unkind about homeless people. And he looked at me in a very stern, very angry. And he said, Doug, we're all one or two mistakes away from being that guy. Shut the fuck up. And then he didn't say anything more about it. I didn't push back. But I mean, that was 33 years ago, that conversation, and I've never forgotten it. Every time I see a homeless person, I hear Charlie's voice. You say that that 95% of the people that a huge percent, I think you said 95%, are living paycheck to paycheck. Do people just underappreciate how close so many of us are, how any of us are really to being one of the people that you interviewed in the Des Moines area who is homeless, who is suffering from hunger?
I think that people recognize their own personal circumstances, but they're so focused on their personal circumstances, it's hard to think about other people's. But then the rhetoric surrounding it is that every time that we feed somebody, SNAP benefits or something, it's a zero-sum game, and it's taking money from our pockets. They don't see it as an investment in humanity. I guess and so what's happened is that hungry people, poor people have been so vilified by the right and by capitalism. I mean, and it's just like but if we don't succeed, there's a whole narrative that if we don't succeed in life, it's all our fault. It's all our responsibility. That all these people should have pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and solved their own problems. Why should I pay for that? Well, you pay for that. You pay for that like you pay for roads. You pay for fire. You pay for police. We pay for. I just think it should be part of the social infrastructure, so that, let's say, Scott's family, his family won't help him. So what we need is smart, federal and state rules and regulations that help those of us that have fallen on hard times. And it's like, we want to distance ourselves. There's something that happens. If you see, and I know, like in Iowa City and Des Moines, there's a lot of homeless people, and you can't interact with all of them. But the thing is, people don't want to interact. You walk by them, you ignore them, or maybe you give them a little bit of money, but you never engage in a meaningful way, or rarely. And it's part of human nature, in the sense that the more that we know each other, the more we feel that we have an obligation. Like Nik was saying earlier, if Nik says, I need a place to sleep tonight, I can't afford a hotel room, we're going to give him a place to sleep. Or if we need a place to sleep, Nik's going to give it to us. It's just, there's, with friendships and knowing people, there's a certain amount of obligation that we feel for each other. We don't want to establish that relationship with somebody that is, homeless or unhoused or on the streets. We want to keep moving. We don't want to see them as people, because if we see them as people, we have obligations to them. And given that's part of human nature, that's where the state should step in, where we should fund people that are trained to help them, trained to, that have the resources, that know what the resources are. Because it's human nature not to invest in people that we don't have an obligation to. And that obligation comes with knowledge, with empathy, with appreciation, with friendship. And so we are constantly keeping those people who need our support at bay.
Now,
because it's human nature.
You're on just a quick follow-up. In terms of your engagement, you actually engage the people one-on-one. When you see people who are homeless, you'll engage. You'll find out their story. Conventional wisdom and the advice you get from like nonprofit leaders, people that would run, like, for example, the Des Moines area Religious Council's food pantry, the place where you went. They would, and I've often been advised, don't engage with the homeless people if you really care about the topic. First of all, there's mental health issues. You might be exposing yourself to some violence or vulnerability, and you're not sure how they're going to spend the money. So if you really care about it and you want to make sure that money is used properly, don't give homeless people money on the street. Make a donation to the Des Moines Area Religious Council. What would you say to that? I think prevailing conventional wisdom on engagement with people who are homeless.
Yeah, I've heard that too. And I've been in such, I'm a pretty big guy. I'm privileged. You were
a wrestler, so you could probably fight.
I'm an old wrestler, but then also
I wouldn't fight you, Bob.
Well, it's I don't know. I'm not very formidable anymore. But it's like I feel compelled to do that. They are my fellow human beings. And if I want to give them money, I'm going to give them money. I was walking through a cemetery in Albuquerque, and a guy came up to me and said, do you have $5? So I reach in, and I had it. And I said, what are you going to use it for? And he said, beer. And I said, okay, cheers, whatever. there's all, and Jason and I have said this in a post today, that we aren't experts in hunger. We aren't experts in poverty. We're storytellers, and we have empathy. And and just because, well, and let's dispel a rumor. The homeless are much more likely to be victims of crimes than perpetrators. I forget the exact number, but they're the victims of crime. And so, and something like 40% of women that are unhoused or homeless, whatever, are victims of domestic violence. So I see an old woman on the sidewalk, which I did, and I wrote a story called Old Woman on the Sidewalk. I found an old woman on the sidewalk, and I walked up to her and I said, "Are you okay?" She had just been in Helping Hands in Knoxville, and she had all kinds of things around her, and she wanted to show me what she had, whatever she had, she wanted to tell me about it. But I walked up to her, but that was after I walked up to her and I said, "Are you okay?" And she looked at me and she said, "Are you okay? You look sad." And I was sad because I found an old woman on the sidewalk. And so the experts say I'm not supposed to go talk to the old woman on the sidewalk and not give her a $20 bill. I'm not supposed to do that. Well, I mean, how can I not walk up to that old woman on the sidewalk and see if I can help? And so I can't help everybody. That's why the state should be there. That's why we need good, smart policies and experts to help these people and give them real help. And I don't know if my $20 helped her at all, but at least she knew that somebody cared. And she cared for me. She was worried I was sad when I was sad because of her. And if we can't provide an old woman on the sidewalk the food and the mental help that she needs, what kind of a country are we? I'm supposed to walk by her? I'm not going to walk by her, and neither would you two. We're not going to do that. And so if that's the conventional wisdom, I don't care. I don't need to be told how to interact with other people. I don't need to judge them about how they might spend their money. Maybe they're going to spend their money to find a little bit of comfort in the world. And I'm not going to deny them. I lived on the Zuni Reservation in the 80s. And one of the things that happened, it's a long story, but it's like if people were hungry, you knew who was hungry, and there were societal mechanisms to make sure that people got fed. A group of individuals, I'm not going to go into it, would come, and and you would know who they were. I don't want to go into it too much, but you knew who they were, and you knew they were there for food. And when I first got there, they told me this might happen, and these were. And it did happen, and they told me how to prepare, and the ceremonies associated with it. And so I did everything right. I was fortunate enough to have a Zuni friend that told me how to do it right. And she said, "You always give what you can spare. If they're at your door, there's somebody hungry, and you give what you can spare." I looked at my cupboard. What can I spare? Everything, which was like 4 bags of groceries. And so they wouldn't let their people starve. Here, we let our people starve. We can't let them starve. And it doesn't matter the circumstances. And we need smart government policy that truly helps them. And I was in Seattle, and when Ronald Reagan became president and they cleared the mental institutions, Seattle overnight went from being a place where you never saw homeless people. This is like 1980, until anytime you walked around downtown, you would hear people in the bushes trying to find some comfort. Those people were putting people that were you can discuss whether people need to be institutionalized or not, but it was overnight that the homeless population increased when that mental health care went away. And this was under Reagan, and we're not any better now. In fact, under the Trump administration, we're worse. And now we're making people reapply for SNAP. This is crazy. We want these people in our society are disposable. We treat them as morally, intellectually, whatever, as lesser beings. And the people Jason and I spoke with are not lesser beings. They're deserving of support. They are not disposable. Our policy treat them as if they're disposable. You got me on a rant there.
One thing you mentioned was when you met the old woman on the sidewalk is that, she asked you, are you okay? And that reminded me of one of the last things Scott said to you was, I hope I didn't bum you out, right?
Yes.
That really stood out to me as well. How do for people who might be watching who aren't active, who aren't informed, or maybe are just now becoming informed and want to know what can I do? How do people go about demanding societal change?
Well, very good. I mean, that is really good question. And the classic response is, I was ready to say is contact DMARC, help your local, food pantry. That's what Luke told us was the best thing to do. But you're talking big picture, beyond just helping out and giving what cash we have, what we can do. What we're supposed to do is, and share what you can. I made a donation to our food bank the other day, and I said, I wish I could give more. And the person said, no, this is perfect. Thank you very much. So whatever we can give, and I'm not a money bags, but I can give some. But the big question is, how do we change it? That's a great question. The thing is, you need to think about it. You need to engage, and you need to demand it. You need to not vilify people who have less than you, people that are different from you, people that you might not share a lot with. I mean, and this goes through all parts of society where we tend to compartmentalize and consider people as other, and we just need a society that is kind and caring and recognized, as Charity did, that the daughter of one of the people we interviewed, is that it begins at home. And then we have to demand that our policymakers engage, that we have thoughtful discussions, and we vote for people that are committed, that are willing to say, children are going to die if we deprive them of SNAP. There's little fraud in SNAP. It's one of the most efficient government programs. And so we need to tell our legislators what we want. We need to tell them that we demand people be treated with dignity, and we need smart, efficient public policy and trained people that know what they're doing to help people, to provide the opportunities for all of us to be good people, contributing, enjoying life, and contributing and helping those around us. This is what we want. And so it's going to require, changing the mental. We have to change our thinking that helping people get off of the street or eat or get medical care isn't just a cost. It's an investment that will pay off. Imagine all those kids that are going hungry now. They're doing worse at school. We're guaranteeing that those kids that are hungry won't be as successful in life as they could be. It's the Trump administration is guaranteeing that our children will not be successful because of all the things that you can do to a child is not feed them. My God, who have we become?
So, Bob, when people talk about, I get angry when people talk about waste, fraud, and abuse in government programs, as if that means the program itself should be negated. I mean, during World War II, then Senator Truman, I mean, the military-industrial complex, there were people fleecing the United States government in terms of military contracts and the construction of military equipment. But we knew we had to build up to beat the Germans and the Japanese. So there was an understanding that there would be some level of, not that it was accepted, some level of fraud and abuse. But we didn't just stop building tanks and planes and armament. We had Senator Harry Truman convene oversight committees to try to do everything he could to reduce that waste, fraud, and abuse. During COVID, the decision makers, because some of them told me this off the record, that they knew there would be massive waste, fraud, and abuse with the sugar high of the economy by COVID relief money, but they had to do it. So just suggesting that because there's some level of abuse or somebody takes advantage of the system does not mean that we should end programs.
Great point.
Because they're happening at the $1 billion level, so they're upset that somebody they think should be working is taking a sandwich or a glass of orange juice or getting a blanket to sleep under in a homeless shelter. People are upset about that. Meanwhile, there's billions of dollars of graft and corruption going on across the Potomac, where all the military industrial complex, all the lobbyists and defense contractors are located to the tune of billions and billions of dollars, Bob.
Yeah. Yeah. All of that. Well, I mean, those people are just choked with money. They don't know what to do with it. And, just the income inequality and the billionaires sucking up everything and, not feeding people. I mean, they want us to look down and blame each other. They want to divide us along any ways that we can so we won't point the finger at them.
It's almost like these tech oligarchs are trying to create two species of human beings. I mean, these tech oligarchs have, billions and billions of dollars, and they think they can code themselves out or defy mortality itself. Like, that's why they're on all these weird low calorie diets and they take all these pills, have all these exercise type regimens. I mean, if you go to Silicon Valley, you see guys that are 50 who look like they're 30. If you go to homeless encampments like the one you were just at, you see people who are 50 and look like they're 80. I mean, you can see it in the difference and just in the body type of people. I know that Laura Bellin has a great piece on your friend Chris Jones on Bleeding Heartland, and I saw Laura's on this call. But Jones says, you can tell the health of somebody by looking at their skin. Well, all you have to do is look at the people in the photos that Walsmith so brilliantly captured, and they don't look well. But meanwhile, you have all this money being scooped and segregated from our part of the country to Austin, Boston, and Silicon Valley, and you have these guys operating as if they're demigods. And the wealth and income inequality is at such a level. And I'll ask you this, Bob. I mean, do you think because of the canyon-sized income inequality, are we headed toward real violence? Are we headed toward? I mean, we're in a cold cultural civil war. Clearly, are we headed to an actual civil war that's largely, that might be balkanized, but largely based on this exploding income inequality?
Well, I fear so. When the United Healthcare executive who was from Iowa was killed, it seemed like a lot of people expressed opinions that they understood why somebody could be so mad to take the life of somebody who led a company whose algorithms denied people life-saving care. There wasn't a lot of sympathy. I have sympathy for the man. I have sympathy for his family, but there wasn't a lot of sympathy. And a friend came to me and said, "What's going to happen? Is there going to be a revolution?" And I said, and I don't know whether this is true or not, but this is what I said at the time, I said, "You're not going to do it, Craig, and I'm not going to do it, but somebody's going to kill these people and eat them." And that's horrific. But I think that people are going to rise up. and I don't know what shape it will take. And it's just going, and I'm sorry if that was depressing, but it's what came to mind to a friend. But I think there will be potentially a violent revolution against the ultra rich. And you know what? I think that we need to take everybody that was in this series Jason and I did. They're like canaries in the coal mine. What happens to us when AI takes all of our jobs, when robotics takes all of our jobs? I was a carpenter, and I used to think that there's no way a robot could build a house. Well, we're 3D printing houses now. What happens when we are all don't have our jobs? What happens to us? There will be, and we're not taking this very seriously. We'll use ChatGPT, or, we look at the cool robot videos or whatever. No, humans, we used to need a lot of humans. Technology we needed a lot of humans to survive. Now we've got like a glut of humans. And it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And the people that are building this aren't thinking about that. All they're thinking about is they're either thinking about their bottom line, or they think that their jobs will always be safe, or they're thinking we can't put any rules or restrictions on AI or we'll lose to China. I think unless AI, robotics, unless there's especially AI, if there isn't some kind of, rules and regulations on it, we've got a horrific landscape coming up. And I think one of the things that needs to happen is that as they mine our data, we need to be compensated for it. We also need a universal basic income. I looked up the other day, somebody showed me how to do that. Facebook trained its AI model on scientific papers. And in my time in the academy, I wrote a lot of scientific papers and books, and Facebook used 52 of my scientific articles to develop its AI. How much has Facebook paid me? Nothing. And those people will suck it out of us. They'll suck everything they can out of us. All of our labor, all of our intellectual products. They'll, my wife and I had a conversation. We're moving into a new house. And she said, we need to make sure we don't have mice. And I said, yeah, you're right. And so I go back to my computer, and there was an ad about how to prevent mice getting into your home. They're mining us, and they're mining our environment. They're mining our human capital. They're mining the capitalists have done this for hundreds of years. They go to places and they extract all the resources that they can without any concern for the environmental or social consequences. That's what happened continent after continent, country after country. And now it's happening here in Iowa, and we see it around us as we see our beautiful countryside getting mined fence row to fence row, for corn and soybeans. And we see the environmental degradation. Chris Jones writes about it a lot. And we're not getting, it's a war. I hate to be so pessimistic, but I'm not pessimistic is because we can fight. We have to stop this. We have to stand up, which is back to Nik's question. We have to make sure that the people that share our values, that share our appreciation for others, our empathy for each other, especially for people that are different from us, we have to elect people that honor that don't want to pit us against each other and recognize. And it just so pisses me off. People say, why do those people want to come to our countries? Why don't their countries solve their own problems? We created the problems. We extracted the resources and left when we got all of them that we can. Those people are coming here because of the damage that we did through colonialism, through environmental change, through the climate catastrophe that's coming. And the chickens are coming home to roost, and we have to decide, are we going to accept responsibility for what we have put the rest of the world through and have empathy and understanding and appreciation? borders are artificial aspects of history, and they're always created by the people with the power that don't care about people who live there. It's all about extracting human and natural resources. And so what we have to do is we have to re-envision what the world we want to live in looks like. And we have to stop this gross income inequality. We need to tax the rich. And people say, well, no, that means your prices will go up. And that's something they want us to believe. One of the most productive times in American history was in the 1950s when taxation on corporations was like 70 or 80%. And so what did the companies do? Well, they decided that, well, if I don't want to give it to the government, I better invest in research and infrastructure. I better pay my people more. That's when most people could live with one person working in the family. But no, we've decided that we want to live in a society where the rich get richer and the poor get as little as they will possibly allow us. In fact, they want us to be appreciative. They want us desperate and appreciative of any little bone they throw us. Am I wrong?
No. And one thing I was going to follow up with, is that none of these things that you're talking about are a secret. These are all things that you could open up any newspaper, any book, and these things are right there with evidence that this is what's happening. Data centers are destroying, the ecosystems and destroying poor communities in the U.S. and abroad. The wealth and income inequality, all of this stuff. You need to get out of the comment. For me, what I tell my family members and some of my friends is you got to quit arguing in comment sections on social media. Most of the time, you're not arguing with the real person. You're arguing with a bot that was bought and paid for by somebody who's trying to divide us. But no, thank you for that, Dr. Bob. And what can people? Let's switch gears a little bit. Talk a little bit more about your Substack. Again, what can people expect? From your Substack when they subscribe to Deep Midwest politics and culture.
Well, I started off writing about a lot of different things, and lately it's been a lot about politics, and it's and this hunger series Jason and I did has sort of rerouted me a little bit. I want to start, and I was always sort of drawn to different kinds of things. I've written about immigration, some of the things. I've written several pieces on immigration for the New York Times, but in my Substack, I write about the thing, and I love being in the New York Times or, in Time Magazine or something. But it's like with the Substack, what you find is me not writing for an editor, me not trying to find something that will pass muster. And, it's you find me and you always found what I felt, but I might write about something that would never be published. And I still think that it's valuable. For example, something that I did the other day, I was in a city out west and I accidentally wandered into a strip club. And
come on, Bob. How do you accidentally wander into a strip club, Bob?
I almost didn't write it because I was worried.
Did one of your friends have you blindfolded? Come on, Bob. You accidentally wander into a strip club?
I'm glad that you asked that. I'm looking for a bar, okay? And I wrote it. I explained it. And I'm walking down, and some people saw me approaching. I couldn't read the sign, and a young couple, opened the door and held it open for me. And I thought, okay, so this is a bar. And I walked in, and I was surprised, and a young woman patted a seat beside her and said for me to come and sit with her at the bar. And so I did. And so I told remarkable story about these women and their plans. People should just go read it because the people that, I almost didn't write it because I was afraid of that misperception. But I have no reason not to be honest with you. That's how that's what really happened. But still, that's something that I learned, and I wrote a story about it. And so they were using they were young entrepreneurs using whatever resources they had to survive, and they had plans for the future, what they wanted to do. One of them wanted to be a real estate agent. The other was trying to get her family from a foreign country here. And so if I don't write that story, the story came to me. I had to write it. So I guess you're going to, and would that have ever made the New York Times or made anything? I'm an anthropologist, and so I'm the only, when I was a taxi driver and an anthropologist, a professor, and had to moonlight as a taxi driver in Albuquerque, I'm the only guy in town that could go home to his wife and say, "Hey, I was talking to a hooker last night, and she told me this." It's one of the things of being an anthropologist is you talk to people that other people might not. And those young women are human beings. They're not to be looked down upon. You can look down your nose at them if you want. You could say they should find some other way of making a living, and maybe you're right or whatever, but they were doing what they wanted to do, that they saw their best shot at, one, bringing her family from another country, and the other, building a successful career.
Bob, one of the things coursing through this conversation is, the judgment that you're talking about that's heaped on people that are in unfortunate situations, that are in struggling situations. Doesn't a lot of that stem from the prosperity gospel? Joel Osteen and people that peddle this notion that if, things are going well for you, that if you have money, if you have wealth, if you have comfort, if you have privilege, if you have opportunity, that all of those things are because God is smiling on you, that you are one of God's, favored creatures. That's the prosperity gospel. And on the other side of that, and it's part of the prosperity gospel, because the prosperity gospel is all about winners and losers, that if you are hungry, that if you are homeless, that if you are working at a strip club, that if you are on the margins economically, that you must have done something sinful, or God must be frowning upon you, and that you deserve your fate, and that God wants you to suffer. So how dare we mortals interfere in God's plan as designed by the prosperity gospel, which, there are different religions here, different denominations in my community, which is obviously largely Christian. But what I've noticed through the years is a migration from, Carroll's a very heavily Catholic town, a migration from the social justice teachings of the Catholic Church, which I think most progressives would agree with the exception of their strong pro-life, anti-abortion commitment that is wrapped very centrally in the social justice teachings of the Catholic Church. But that was kind of the foundation of the Carroll I grew up in. And now it's moved more toward the evangelical right, more toward this embrace of the prosperity gospel. And I think that's maybe one of the reasons why people react to the homeless and unhoused and hungry and marginalized the way they do, because they think this is what God has designed. Your thoughts on that, Bob, or Nik?
That's all you, Dr. Bob.
It's a lie. The prosperity gospel is a lie.
But isn't it prevalent? It's prevalent, though. It's
prevalent. It's prevalent, but let's ask, who does it serve? Who does it serve? It serves the privileged. They have a rationale to judge you. They're sitting high on, on the principles of their faith. And so they get to judge you. They decide who is good enough, and they confound what they've got. First, it's also, I am a lapsed Lutheran, but I remember my Sunday school lessons. And the Sunday school lessons I got were about feeding the hungry, helping the poor, welcoming the stranger, the Beatitudes. Those are the lessons that I learned. And I will say this, there is nothing Christian in the prosperity gospel. And I can say that. And I'm going to say that. And I will say that over and over and over again. These people are being misled. And they're being misled so the people at the top of the pyramid are profiting. These people are being exploited, and they sit around and feel good about it. I walked into a restaurant in Pella a few years ago, and when I was walking in, and the waitress looked at the women sitting at one of the booths, and she held up her finger to tell me to be quiet. And I looked, and I saw that there were two women. I knew one of them, and so I thought, okay, they're praying. I'll be quiet. Okay. And then I got close enough to hear what they were praying for. I thought maybe they were praying for nobody to get hurt in the football game, or I thought maybe they were praying for a sick friend or something. But you know what they were praying for? Money. Dear Lord, give me more money.
But that works. That works, Bob. I pray for money all the time to God. I bargain with God and ask him for money. It always works, doesn't it? All you have to just say a prayer and
it's a scam. It's a scam. And it's a scam that has hurt Christianity.
Yeah.
It has hurt it. I mean, and you just look at, there's a, and I have nothing against church. I have nothing against religions. It just is what it is. But when I see the small churches crumbling town after town, like, I'm not going to say the name of the town, but if you've got a town of about 10,000 and you had 20 churches before, and then you bring in this mega church, what happens to all those churches that were helping their parishioners? They're gone. It's the big mega church where everybody has to be seen and be there on Sunday morning and pray for money. And I know that some of them do have services to help the poor. That's why some people don't like government either helping the poor, because they think you should go to your family or you should go to your church to get help. And every time that the government pays somebody or gives somebody SNAP payments, it's taking away a convert. So, I mean, there's lots of complex arguments, but it's a lie. It's a lie. If you are judging people, it has and looking down at them and saying that, they're bad people. They made bad decisions. They don't deserve any help. It's cruel. And it has nothing to do with the Sunday school of my youth. It's nothing. And it's all about money and power and control. And and the Trump administration, I'm just going to say it, everything so much of what they're doing is they're trying to turn America into a white, nationalist, Christian ethno-state. They're trying to. And people say, "Oh, that's hyperbole, Bob." Well, and here's another, but I interviewed actual Nazis on the foot of the Capitol and talked about it. And I said, "How can you believe this stuff?" And they said, "Well, most Americans believe this. Most Americans think Americans would only be for white people and everybody else should go home. And the white people that are perverts should be put on reservations where they can do their disgusting things." They're meaning gay people, trans people. And so they want everybody that isn't of European descent to leave. They want, gay people and LGBTQ plus people to be put on reservations. And I said, nobody wants that. People don't want that in America. And they said, yes, they do. Most people want that. That's why they voted for Trump. The Nazis know what's happening.
And, both of you are more dialed in and researched and well-read, than anybody else I know. And, what I've been telling people lately is if you're not upset or going crazy over what's happening, you're just not paying attention. But, in the midst of all the madness, Dr. Bob, how do you maintain hope?
I believe in the goodness of people. I believe that we are good people. I believe that I believe that most everybody I know is fundamentally good. I think that a lot of people are fundamentally misled. I think that we have a right-wing media ecosystem that has created this. And that I just think that eventually people will come to their senses. I mean, look, if Marjorie Taylor Greene can, most people can. I mean, it's the media and it's the algorithms, and that's why I watch Fox News every day. That's why I read the National Review every day. That's why I look at Newsmax. That's why I go. That's why I look at the other media that's out there, because I want to know what they're being told. And so much of it's half truth. So much of it's lies. It's like they'll find a kernel of truth in something. It's like they'll say, why are these Democratic mayors not wanting President Trump to send people to help fight this terrible crime? Why don't they want the National Guard there? Why don't they want the Marines there? Well, for one thing, sending the Marines into American cities to arrest American citizens is illegal. But the right-wing media doesn't tell people that. I can't believe, and I was listening to WHO radio the other day, and they're saying, wow, we killed another, people in boats, in the Caribbean, way to go. And somebody said, well, why don't we just, intercept them? Oh, that puts our people in jeopardy. We don't want our people in jeopardy. What if they're not drug dealers? Well, they don't like to think about that. So they rationalize the most evil kind of thing that is imaginable. It's the thought of destroying boats when we've got powerful Coast Guard, or, there is something called justice, where there is something called due process. You don't kill people before you know anything about what they're doing. And some of those people, I read something the other day, an AP reporter looked into this. Who are the people that are dying? And, and on one boat, they were drug dealers. They weren't drug dealers. They were people that were moving drugs. One of the people that was moving drugs was a store owner or some small businessman whose business failed, and he was just trying to keep his family alive. Some of the people were, and that's what most of the people are doing, is trying to keep their family alive. And, America has a big drug problem. And, I just think that there's better ways to handle it through the ways that we've been doing it before, by intercepting these boats. But now we're cheering. WHO radio is cheering when more people are killed in a boat coming across the country. Drugs are not. And we also learned that some of the people were returned. Some of the people survived and returned because it was a fishing boat. And how long did the media hang on to that? Not very long. I don't know. I am hopeful. I think that we're good. I think that we will transcend all of this. I mean, I really do.
Bob, I do know one thing that made all of us hopeful, and is Nik's documentary, which is really about resilience, and you're featured in that. Nik, we're finishing up a conversation. All three of us. I'm Doug Burns. We have Dr. Bob Leonard, Nik Heftman. All three of us journalists, all members of the Iowa Writers Collaborative. Bob Leonard, and another member of the Writers Collaborative, a songwriter, photographer, just terrific writer, Jason Walsmith. Jason Walsmith and Bob Leonard put together this terrific series on homelessness and hunger. They interview people at the Des Moines Area Religious Council's food pantry on Army Post Road in Des Moines, and then at locations that you wisely didn't really, you didn't put street addresses or identify the locations of some of these homeless encampments, but you went in there and really, asked terrific questions. You summoned the humanity from those experiences and presented it. So we'd sure encourage everybody to read the series on homelessness and hunger. That's on your Substack, Deep Midwest Politics and Culture. Jason Walsmith's The Raconteurist. But we want to end on notes of hope and resilience. Bob, you're featured in Nik's film, which is on the spoken word poet Caleb Rainey, who performs under the name the Negro Artist. Nik, I know you've had some activity with that film. It'll probably be shown a few more places in Iowa. Just give us an update on what you're working on. I know you have a new Mazda SUV. I saw the beautiful Mazda SUV in your text to me yesterday, but what is happening in your world, and what's coming up on your platforms, Nik, that we can all look forward to.
Well, thank you for that announcement, Doug. I was gonna buy a Tesla, but right before I signed the paper, I thought about Dr. Bob. I can't do it. Just can't do it. But we're still entering in festivals. We're in year 2 now of screening the film. It's normal for a film to be screening and going in festivals for a couple of years. So yeah, we're in our second leg, trying to get a screening at some point soon in Caleb's hometown, Columbia, Missouri. We haven't done that yet. And also in February, we are going to have at least one screening in Iowa. I'm looking to do more in recognition of Black History Month. We did do a few in Iowa and in Michigan for Black History Month last year, so we're trying to do the same this year. And then as we try to get into festivals, get more awards, get more recognition. And I'm hoping sooner than later that we're on a streaming platform. So I'm working on all that. And I'll be sure to update everybody on Substack and on my platforms, on my Facebook and Instagram. The Negro Artist Film Experience on Facebook, Instagram, negroartistfilmexperience.com. I'll do my best to keep that updated. But as soon as it's on a streaming platform, everybody will know, and it will actually be on a few. It won't just be on one. Many people will be able to see this. So really looking forward to that and exposing more people to Dr. Bob's wisdom. For those who don't know, he is the star. He's the Tom Cruise of the film. And even though the film's about Caleb, just introducing more people to Dr. Bob. I mean, when I screen the film around the U.S., people point to Dr. Bob's story as very moving, and they really love what he has to say, and they really love Dr. Bob as a human. People have walked up to me and mentioned his name more than any other name in the film, more than my own. So please, if you haven't seen the film, just stay tuned, and I'll do my best to keep you updated.
The only reason I'm in the film is because of a profound memory that came to me out of the power of Caleb Rainey's poetry. Otherwise, it wouldn't have existed. It's the power of poetry provided by Caleb Rainey.
Gentlemen, anything else for any other thoughts? Obviously, Dr. Bob, we could go on for hours, and Nik and I have been known to have phone conversations and so forth that last for 3 hours too. So we could certainly hit more topics, but I know we have other things on our agenda today. Nik, is there anything else that we glossed over or didn't hit in the interview with Bob, or anything else you want to talk about, or anything else you want to preview that's coming up, either for us with this programming or for your life in journalism and filmmaking?
Yeah, I want to say a couple things. First, I want to apologize to everybody viewing. I didn't welcome any of you or thank you all for being here. So thank you all for joining. I know quite a few of you have joined late, but there will be a rebroadcast of this conversation. It's definitely worth watching the whole thing. But thank you to all. Thank you to Laura Bellin and everybody else who's joined. Susan Beckman was here earlier. Thank you all for joining us. Dr. Bob, I just have one last question, if I can ask, if you have the time. You know, I'm asking this as I just contributed to the corporate structure. As Doug exposed me, I did just buy a vehicle, but
it wasn't a Tesla though.
But it wasn't a Tesla. No. But I'm of the belief that the solution to everything is if we all stuck together, regardless of the politics, regardless of our beliefs and backgrounds. If we all started, growing our own food, making clothes for each other, building houses for each other, and totally X'd out the corporate structure, made our own medicine even, that we'd be better off. And that seems to be the solution to a lot of our problems. Am I crazy for thinking that?
I think that it's a little bit idealistic. I just think we have to bring them to their knees to recognize that they're exploiting people. Billionaires shouldn't exist. and that we need this all started sometime in the 1970s when Milton Friedman told, corporations, you have no responsibility except to the shareholders. And we're lucky enough here in Marion County where I live to have some good corporate, um, businesses, manufacturers mainly, but we have to rest. We have to somehow convince them that investing in people instead of extracting as much as they can from us is a better outcome for the long term, not only for the people, but also for those businesses and also to help them sleep at night. The people that write the algorithms that deny payments to people, the people that write the algorithms that pit us against each other, that there's a better world out there where they have enough money and the rest of us don't have to be, there's so many of us can't thrive. We should all be provided with the opportunity to thrive and recognize that we're all in this together. I think that that's the key. And the key also isn't the corporations being benevolent. The key is also that they pay their fair share of taxes so that we can build policy that indeed helps us, not the things that they're cherry picking, because we need smart government providing the resources for people, and corporations giving donations isn't enough. I don't have the answer. We're going to need corporations, but they're out of control, and somehow we have to bring them back under control, where they're working not just for the profit, but they're also working for the people. And I know there are people who would say, well, that's not what they're supposed to be doing, but the world is broken.
So, Bob, you said that in an earlier call, an earlier part of this conversation, you suggested that violence is violence based on economic inequality, on economic injustice, that violence is imminent, that it's likely that we could be in a balkanized civil war, and then you suggested that you would not engage in it yourself. You were talking about a conversation you were having with your friend. Why not? I mean, if you really think that we're at a point where we have this, Grand Canyon-sized income inequality divide, that you have, billionaires and people at the top kind of creating a superhuman class, and then condescending, dismissing, and even being willing to let people starve. Why shouldn't there be violence under those circumstances? Why would you not engage in it if you expect others will?
It's because that's what Trump wants. He wants violence because then he has an excuse to, exert greater control over us. I will never be violent. It's not in my nature, but I don't believe in violence either. I fear that it's going to happen with all of these with the people on the streets, masked agents kidnapping people and arresting people, that there hasn't been more violence is a tribute to the humanity of the people on the streets that are resisting ICE peacefully. Trump wants violence. We don't want violence. We want to solve the problems peacefully. I mean, we've had generations of civil rights leaders that have taught us that.
All right. Well, thank you all again for joining us for this amazing live. Doug, we neglected to talk about your platform. So what's next for the Iowa Mercury? And for people who may be coming from Dr. Bob's subscribers, describe what the Iowa Mercury is all about, and what's next for it.
Well, thanks, Nik. Yeah, the Iowa Mercury. One of the exciting things is I really, I think, as much as anybody in the collaborative, have tried to. I do, multiple stories myself, my own reporting. So that's featured there. But I really do try to find underrepresented voices. I try to find guest columnists from Western Iowa. I've had several columnists from the Latino community, Council Bluffs, Denison, other areas around here that have important perspectives right now. And then just within the last couple of weeks, there's a young reporter named Mike Mendenhall, who was the editor at the Newton paper here in Iowa and an associate editor at the Des Moines Business Record. He does journalism in Iowa and Florida, and he's writing part-time and really trying to boost the agricultural coverage that we have. I wanted to ask one more question to Dr. Bob on the way out. So I don't really just want to end with a sort of a prognostication of what a civil war might look like. That's pretty difficult. But Dr. Bob, Chris Jones really well, who's also involved in the collaborative. He's looking at potentially running. He's got an exploratory approach right now to potentially running for Iowa Secretary of Agriculture. Do you think he will run? And if he does run, again, you know him well, you know where his thoughts are. What would he bring to that race? And would he make some of these issues of water quality and pollution and land use? Do you think he'd be successful in moving the window on what is part of the political dialogue in the state?
Well, that's an interesting question. Yeah, Chris is my friend. And I would suggest that anybody that wants to learn more about, his decision about running for Secretary of Agriculture, not to check out Laura Bellin's story.
Yeah, she really had an incredible piece up on Bleeding Heartland, and Laura, as Nik mentioned, was on the call today. But you're right, that was a thoroughly reported, brilliantly reported piece. But continue, Bob. Sorry.
No, that's all right. It's he's going to shake things up. We are at a tipping point on water and cancer, and people are sick of it. And like I said, we're being. I was talking to one of Senator Grassley's staffers the other day, and I said that people are just they're taking over hillsides here. They're putting things under the plow that have never been put before. They're doing to the edges of the creeks, and he said, "Oh no, not that much more land has been, put under the plow." And it's just like you haven't looked. There's not a lot more to be put under, and what they're doing is they're going right to the creek banks. They're taking hills they never took before. Sure, most of us, 95% is under cultivation already. They're taking more and more and more. And it's almost like they don't want people on the landscape to see what they're doing. But I think that Chris is the tip of the spear on water quality. He will guide the conversation. People have to take him seriously because, you know what? We're tired of our friends and family dying of cancer. We're tired of watching we're tired of losing, the flora and fauna that, if you lived here long enough that you notice that we've lost. People are fed up. They've had enough of the exploitation of our resources and our water. And again, without any concern for the human or environmental social consequences. And so if Chris wasn't there, we would have to invent him.
So if he is there, and by there meaning not just the author of the Swine Republic, which is his best-selling book that's now in I think in a third or even a fourth printing, multiple printings. One of the most well-read writers on Substack, as Laura pointed out in her piece today, and as you and I, as all three of us know, Bob. But let's say he is the nominee for Iowa Secretary of Agriculture. Does he fundamentally change the debate in the gubernatorial race and the U.S. Senate race, or is he just siloed off there in a race for Iowa Secretary of Agriculture? Is the voice and the dramatic, urgent change that he's calling for, and then his ability to be brutally honest and sometimes verbally ruthless in advocating for his positions. Will he change the dialogue in the gubernatorial and U.S. Senate races, or will he kind of be off to the side as a separate debate?
A lot of it depends on how the media treats him. if the media puts his voice and his thoughts out there, I think that people will listen to him. I think he's already changed the debate in the sense that people are taking water quality seriously. And he's been tough on both Republicans and Democrats. And I think that all the people he's been tough on, I've just spoken with, they don't appreciate that at all. But I think that the people respect it when people, they respect it when people say the truth about those who are in power, seeking power. I think he's already shifted it. I think people at everybody that's running for office now has read what Chris Jones has to say and are thinking about it. We'll see. And he's charismatic. I've been to places where he's drawing great crowds. I think he's a fighter. I think people want somebody that will fight for our water quality. And I think it's complex. I think he knows the issues. He's got a plan. And I think it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for people to hide from the truths that he tells.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you both for an amazing show. Thank you all again for joining. Please definitely subscribe to the Iowa Mercury, the 7 Times, and also Deep Midwest Politics and Culture. Or is it Culture and Politics? Did I say it right the first time?
Nope, you got it right.
All right, I got it right. So, definitely stay tuned to all 3 of our platforms. Definitely subscribe if you haven't already. Again, we're back with season 2 with Nik and Doug's America. We're going to work to do this every Saturday morning. We're going to bring on new guests, and then every now and then it'll just be Doug and I talking a little bit about film, some of the things in our lives, and also promoting some of the great political work that Doug is doing. So please definitely subscribe, stay tuned, and any parting words, Dr. Bob?
Just thank you. You're both dear friends. I very much appreciate all that you do. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate your artistry, your work. You're both inspirational. So thank you. I'm honored to be here with you all and to call you both friends.
Okay, thank you. Well, we will we'll be back soon with another episode. Thanks for wrapping it up, Nik, and I will see you, Nik, and see you, Bob, hopefully very, very soon.
Definitely. Yep. Thank you, and thanks to the listeners.
Okay, thanks, guys.